welcome to the Failed Podcast. Hope everybody is doing well. We got a great episode today. We're going to take you on a journey. I think we got a lot to learn from our guest today in our conversations, and as I see her move in the community since I met her, and she's just a go-getter. I'm going to read you a brief description, and then I will introduce her. She is a proud Guatemalan immigrant who made DFW her home 12 years ago with a passion for advocacy, and she leveraged at 14 years. For 14 years she was in leadership. She gained experience in both in private and nonprofit sectors to uplift the Hispanic community. Her mission is to create opportunities, foster growth, and cultivate leadership among Hispanic individuals, but it expands outside of that. And she is dedicated to empowering our community, and she drives positive change, ensuring everyone has a chance to thrive. In her free time, she enjoys to volunteer in nonprofit organizations with business development and civic focus, and mentoring the next generation of leaders to assume a managerial roles or successfully navigate exciting entrepreneurship journey. But we're about to find out what makes that individual. I want to welcome Isabel Cable.
Hi, how are you,
everyone?
How are you, Sam?
Welcome to the Failed Podcast.
To be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, is there anything that you're just like, why did he say that? Why did he read it like that? Or did I leave something out that we need to know that really makes you who you are?
Love for people.
Love for people. That's interesting. We need a little bit of more of that this day and age, it seems like. What are some things that you do to love people? Because it sounds beautiful, but that's a difficult task. How do you do it on a daily basis?
I think having the ability to hear them, understand, connect them, and find a place for them in the community. Yeah. There is a place for everyone. There is a place for the voices to be heard, and there is a place to create that connection in between one business, one journey, and another person.
Yeah.
I believe that everyone is one person away from being successful.
Now, at the end, sometimes I do plug, sometimes I don't. People are just, they're gonna hear you and they're gonna be like, I want to get to know her, I want to reach out to her. Tell us who you are and how people can get, the easiest way that people can get a hold of you, and then we will just get this thing going.
Certainly. I am Isabel Cable, and I am a proud staff member of the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I am the Director of Member Relations, and I have had the great opportunity of serving in that organization for 6 months. Before that, I had a lot of experience in leadership and servant leadership specifically.
Great. So, guys, if you are looking to connect, if you have a business and you need a network because you don't have one, reach out to her and just remind them that the Failed Podcast sent you that way. And so, with that being said, let's get started. We all have a beginning. We all started somewhere. For many people, it's different cities or different places and neighborhoods. You came from Guatemala. You grew up over there for the majority of your life. Tell us a little bit about the earliest memories that you have as a young girl living in Guatemala, whether it be a funny story, a challenging story that has to do with you, your family, or whatever, and then we'll go from there.
I think early stories of my life will involve my family being together, my dad working, my mom staying home. It was a family of 4 people. It involves a lot of family reunions, the Sundays being spent with my cousins at my grandmother's house, and then just coming all together. Sunday, you already knew where you were going to be.
You know, when you say grandmother's house, I can kind of, I understand what that means for me and a lot of people, but what are some things that stood out about her because she was obviously the elder in the family, and sometimes we're young and we don't take advantage because we don't have communication at a high level, so we don't really get to have deep conversations. But looking back at your grandma, what are the smells, what are some of the great memories that she gave you whenever y'all would go to her house?
Food. It was always around
Tell me
food.
a little bit about that food.
So interestingly enough, I am Hispanic, but I am a third generation Chinese.
Oh.
So as a Guatemalan, she had to serve my grandfather and learn how to cook Chinese food.
Interesting.
So it's a very interesting mix.
Yeah.
Because on a Sunday you could find, duck or like interesting, I'm going to say, Chinese dishes.
Yeah.
Homemade by her,
Yeah.
but also you could find Guatemalan homemade food by her as well.
Tell me a traditional plate for both cultures that she would make, and you're like, oh man, Guatemalan, Chinese.
Caldo de frijol con arroz
Yeah.
y tortitas de carne.
You don't need to translate. Y'all just need to go figure out what she's talking about. That sounds good.
You guys gotta go find out what that is. If I could go back right now to Guatemala, my grandmother would be waiting for me with caldo de frijol and tortitas de carne because she knows that's my absolute favorite dish that she makes.
It's interesting that as we grow up, we become more particular and we become, for lack of a better word, more bougie when it comes to the food that we eat. But every time I interview someone and I tell them, give me a memory about food, it's always very simple. And because we don't know it, but it has very little to do with the food. It has to do with the people and the environment and the connections. What were the meals like in your home with your siblings and your mom and dad? What were those dinners like in your early life?
My mom just cooking regular food.
Yeah.
And my dad being tired from work, he was a deep workaholic. He was always busy and he would come really tired, and you could tell that he wanted to put his mind at ease and like numb it. And as I am talking to you right now, I can think right now that I am following the same pattern because you just want to unplug yourself. You just want to disconnect. As a kid, you don't understand. You want your dad to be engaging.
Yeah.
But now that I see, 30 years later, I can understand why he was the way that he was, and I can respect it. Even though at the time I wouldn't understand why he was serious, quiet, focused on watching TV. It's because of all the stress that he was having at his workplace.
So the word workaholic can carry a lot of negativity towards it because it's a matter of sacrifice, it's a matter of self, and it's like, if I have a family, if I have things, those obligations are going to be secondary, my work is first, and a lot of us experienced it with our parents. It's a good trait to have. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make a living, let alone a great living. But there's a balance between being a workaholic and then taking time for self, so that you don't neglect self, and then you look back 20 years later and you're like, what happened to me? And all there is just achievements and promotions and so on. And to me, that's not what makes a person. But obviously I see you and you're a mover and shaker and you're very busy now. I don't know, would you define yourself as a workaholic?
Yes, I would.
What are some of the things your dad taught you to avoid now when it comes to maybe working too much or finding a good balance?
So I think I was sharing with you a little bit about my dad's life and how from retirement to the time that he passed away, it was just a span of 2 years. And I feel like those 2 years were the best years of his life. That's the person that I missed. And if I were to see what he nurtured during those 2 years of his life were relationships.
Yeah.
He had the time to have those sit-down conversations and through coffee, meet with his neighbors.
Yeah.
And like really go into deep conversations where he was passing on wisdom, where he was connecting, where he was bringing everyone around. And I would see that, and those are the memories that I carry on right now. I would see him slowing down intentionally.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're going to dig in a little bit on your dad. He was a workaholic. He had goals. He was driven. He was a military man, very to the point, I imagine. And he always told you, I want to retire early. So he pushed, and he dabbled in real estate, and he ended up doing really good for your family. And you said he retired at 41.
Correct.
And he passed away at 43. That's so fast. What were those years like? What impacted you the most? What was challenging about seeing your dad, in essence, say, now I'm going to rest. Now I'm going to do life. And then it was so short-lived. What are the lessons you take away from those moments?
That you don't have to retire to enjoy that intentionality in how you lead your life. That a good leader is not just the one that is good, and I'm going to take it from my dad, in the ranks, leading the ranks and moving the people forward. The good leaders, the servant leaders, are those who have a very well-rounded life around everything that they do.
Yeah.
And so, it's not just your life at work, it's how you're leading your life at home. And so you are correct. I am busy all the time. And I need to be intentional about leaving work at work, even though sometimes that is really challenging. But like really having some time for me at home, that's really important, because I have to recharge. I have a soul too,
Absolutely.
And I have to get reconnected to what is important to me and what is important to my values, so my passion continues and carries on day after day. If not, one day you will find yourself, and you're going to find yourself lost because you disconnected from what was your journey. But with my dad, it's continuing nurturing relationships. Don't wait until you retire to have those big plans, like traveling to Europe, or purchasing the house, or getting the car, or of course do it intelligently. Of course, don't go and get yourself in debt. But you don't have to wait.
So now you look back and you see what your dad did for the family. He saw what he did for you, and you said you take time to recharge. So I'm going to jump a little bit ahead to the present, and then we're going to go back to your life journey. A lot of people are struggling with mental health. It's very complicated. I use the term mental fitness. Is you keep working at it, you can find a good balance. If you stop, then maybe you'll get off kilter. What type of things do you do so that you can kind of center yourself and kind of disconnect? And I'm asking because we all need different perspectives. Sometimes we're out of ideas. We think it's just journaling and running, but there has to be more than that.
It's funny that you asked that, because it varies per day. It's not the same. What I need to recharge is not the same every day. Sometimes if I have a really hard day, I might just need to be with myself and to wipe my, be pity and, cry over my sorrows. And I just need that space, that human space. Another day, I might need connection and relationship. And so you will find me on my way to work, trying to call my friends and trying to get connected, because what I am missing and needing is like family. I need that badly. Some other days, hey, I just need to nurture my body. And you will see me craving stuff and calling my husband on the way home. And I would be like, hey, I feel like rosas. Oh, who doesn't like rosas, And so it's really paying attention and being very connected with you. And so what is it that you need today? One day could be reading a book. I'm a huge fan of John Maxwell, and I promise you, if you see my nightstand, I have a huge stash of books. And those books are a little incomplete because it depends on what I need for the day.
Growing up, what were some of the major influences aside from your dad and your mom, maybe some outside influences? For some, it's teachers, the way they guide them or teach them. I don't know. But who was one of those strong influences who kind of guided you to this community mindset, this loving and elevating people? Did someone instill that in you at an early age?
No, Sam, as a matter of fact, it was the opposite. Who led me to be like people driven and community driven, it was quite the opposite. So I struggled my whole life with being really thin. And so at school, I suffered a lot from being bullied. So I told you that my dad was working really hard on, purchasing properties in real estate and then making sure that he was retiring. Yeah. But that came at the expense of the family. So I would, from my other side, wealthy family, they had enough, but we didn't. Because he would refuse, he was prideful, and he would refuse help from my grandparents. So you would see us with the worst clothes, hand-me-downs, and you would see us, not having things to really come to school and be the shiny kid at school. Yeah. So I suffered a lot from being bullied because my hair was really dry and, I didn't have the care for my clothes and I didn't have the latest fashion. And so you see me now, and that's why that is really important to me. Yeah. But that also instilled in me the love for who you truly are, because clothes and things and material items will come and go. Those are venal things. Anybody can get them, rightfully or not rightfully. But in the end, it's the essence of the human being who is going to stay forever with them for the length of their life.
So, okay, so whenever it's interesting because I don't love that you got bullied, but I love that you brought that up, and I'm going to kind of dive into it because sometimes our influences aren't individual, sometimes they're circumstantial. Mm-hmm. And although here at the Failed Podcast, we're against bullying 100%, it just hurts people, and I'm against people being hurt. But in being bullied, first of all, there's a lot of pain. Mm-hmm. And from that pain and from being lowered to whatever they're trying to lower you to, you have to choose at some point to elevate yourself. That confidence that maybe you didn't have because of the way you dressed and because you were thin, maybe you were now nutritioned. I don't know where that came from, but usually we hear the opposite. It's always about having too much weight. Mm-hmm. So I love that that's like a new, fresh perspective, and we don't really think about that. But what were some of the lessons that you gained from bullying that help you now? That maybe if someone came up to you and said, you know what, I'm in 7th grade and I'm getting bullied, what would you tell them? What would you tell yourself?
Look at the person that is bullying you. 10 years from now, that is going to change. Mm-hmm. That is going to be different. Yeah. Circumstances can be something that is temporary. You can overcome it. You just need to develop character, because at the end of the day, character is what defines the person. Yeah. Be strong. Don't give up. Don't try to accommodate just to fit in. One of the things that I was talking with a group a couple of weeks ago is how, on the contrary, when I came to the U.S., I would see, and I'm going to define it in this analogy, I would see steak. And I wanted so badly to fit in and be steak. But in reality, I was rice and beans. Oh. And instead of trying to be who I was never going to be, why not focus on being the most flavorful and the best beans and rice that you have ever had? Yeah. So people want to have some of you.
So what defines you now? How would you describe yourself? From where you came from some of the pedigree, from the bullying, the things you went through in your home, that maybe isn't steak. Like maybe it's not now I became the steak, as opposed to saying, no, I'm the beans and rice, but it's the best beans and rice that you'll ever have. I took ownership of who I am, not try to redefine myself for something else. How does that look in your life now? Because where are you now when in that analogy compared to when you first experienced it?
I think I am trying to become the best version of rice and beans that I can be today. And in the process, trying to help other people around me define who they are. Are they steak? Let's embrace it and become the best steak. Hey, you know what? You are a red pepper. And you can be a great addition to any food and make it so flavorful and so unique. Embrace it.
What things defined you? What words, aside from food, because obviously I'm just saying, replace the food with what. When people describe you, what do you want them to say?
Somebody who cares, but like really cares. Somebody who shows up. That if you need somebody at midnight, that person is going to show up, and that will be me. Regardless if you're in jail or if you want me to celebrate something incredible that is happening right now at midnight.
Yeah.
That I am somebody that values you for who you are.
That's a hard one. I'm going to tell you why. I think of the people who think like that and live like that, and they're very exhausted. That there comes a point wherever that marathon is too long and they say, I'm done. People aren't paying attention to me. I'm always giving, and showing up and showing up. Have you bumped up against that? Have you overcome that? And I'm asking because there has to be a good balance. If not, you're the one who's going to keep being on empty.
Yes, I had that experience at my previous job. I built a career for, I'm going to say, 10 years. And I worked on making sure that I was taking care of my reputation. And in the process of valuing other people and trying to add value to the team and trying to build it up from scratch, there was one person in particular that was just different. And that just saw me different, and that put into doubt my integrity as a leader. And that was really hard, because then that led to a lot of heartache from my part, thinking about all the times that I had showed up, thinking about all the times that I had given, and that I had proved myself as a leader with integrity. And now why is that integrity being questioned? However, the biggest lesson that I learned was that you don't do it because you're wanting the recognition, or you want the praising, or you want the people to come back and say, oh, Isabel, you're so great. Thank you so much. You saved my life. You give unconditionally, because otherwise the leadership and what you gave had a condition. It's free. You don't expect, even if they don't come back and thank you, even if they spit back at you, you gave.
Let me ask you this and see if we can get a good answer, because I'm curious. Giving gifts can be a complicated thing. It sometimes it becomes, is this expensive enough? Is this nice enough? And then you don't know how to give a gift. You don't know how to receive a gift.
I'm a terrible gift giver, just so you know.
Oh, no. I was going to tell you, what's the art of giving a great gift? And I'm only asking it based on you giving of yourself in your leadership and servant leadership, because it's like you're constantly giving that gift. But I'm wondering, when you give someone a gift that you love, whether it be a thing or an experience, how does that play out in your head?
Is observing and listening more than what you talk. But like really intentionally observing and paying attention to what is important to the people, what is important to them, what are the things that make their eyes light. You know, what do they talk the most about in the day-to-day?
Can you share a time when you maybe faced a failure in your life? Maybe you were in Guatemala around 25, you came to the U.S. What were some of the failures or challenges that you went through during that time that have really made you who you are, and you've been able to pull some valuable lessons from?
So before I left Guatemala, I had a really good job. Like in Guatemala, you would consider that a good job. I was a customer service manager. I was already managing a team of 15 people. I was not being good at leadership. I was a good manager. I was not a good leader. I'm going to recognize that openly. I got my residency. I started applying for jobs and nobody would call me back. I got 0 callbacks, and that was really hard because here I was with my career, with a degree from Guatemala, with experience
and confidence.
Yes, and how is that nobody is calling me? And so that was really, really hard, and I had to have a conversation with myself to create that awareness and to create that, like idea in my head. And then I had the conversation with my husband, and I told him one night, this is not working. I need to change something, and that is I have to embrace the idea that I'm going to have to start from scratch. I'm going to have to start at a job from 0. And I'm going to be okay with that. And in the interview process, that was literally one of my questions or statements. I said, I'm looking for a company, an organization where I am willing to put the work, the dedication, the time, and the patience to grow. So long as you tell me that there is a light at the end of the tunnel where I am going to be able to have opportunities to grow. And that was my experience at my previous company.
How do you deal going through difficult times? And
It's
I'm
hard.
going to preface it by saying this. Many people, because I feel like people have to go through things, either career change, either environmental changes or challenges in order to be able to answer that honestly. Mm-hmm. Because going through difficult time is easy to say, but what did you do? How did you behave? What conversations did you have to come out of difficult times?
So 2 things. The first thing, and it's really hard. It's going to be really hard, guys. But you have to know in your heart that there is a lesson behind every adversity. There is always a lesson. And unless you're willing to embrace that fact and see and learn the lesson, you are going to come to repeated situations that are similar because you have not learned the lesson. So that is the first thing. When you're going through adversity, when I am going through adversity, I am like, this sucks. But I know there is a lesson for me in here that will be needed and required for me to move into the next level. That's number 1. The second thing that is crucial is that you cannot go through adversity on your own. You need a community. You need your tribe. And that's one of the greatest gifts that I had on my last tribulation. It was huge, it was big, but I can count with my hand those friends that are still unconditional, that were there through every time that I needed to cry, but like seriously, like that cry, like ugly cry. I can tell you by memory where I was, who I was, what they said. And it's needed. You cannot go through tribulation by yourself. You need that tribe, and you need to know who you can trust, where you are going to be able to be ugly, cuss, be vulnerable, like really be naked, Strip off yourself and show true heart and emotion, and that they will not judge you, but instead they will help you to put your pieces back from a broken heart to lift you up.
What makes a great friend for you? What are some key things? I feel like people struggle on how to be friends because either they met and they have a hobby together, or they met, their husbands are friends, or they're friends through family, and so that's their default. And you don't look at, our friendship was established on great conversation. It was established in hard times, and they were there for me to live. Like, what's a great friend for you?
Somebody that is able to speak truth to you with kindness. That is, if I think about my best friend, he doesn't tell me what I want to hear. He tells me what I need to hear, which are two different things. He is somebody that from heart celebrates my accomplishments. Even when I don't think that it's a big deal, he celebrates those accomplishments with me and is genuinely happy. You will be able to distinguish a good friend from a bad friend when somebody doesn't celebrate what's important to you.
What's a small celebration that you overlooked that one of your friends or someone pointed out?
Recently, I had a small interview with Univision, and I just wanted to cringe because I was really nervous.
Yeah.
And he made a big deal out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we could go back in time when we took our first steps and our parents looked at us and they were so proud of us and they clapped and they're like they started walking. It's such a big thing, but yet such a small thing. And whenever I think of small victories that we have that we overlook, I feel like that's the beginning. That's the first step into something. And sometimes we just kind of go by it so quick.
I think, in friendship is my sister is my best friend. She is amazing. And
How close are you in age?
13 years.
Okay.
So even though, I'm 13 years older than her, she's my greatest friend. And I think what makes her so great is that she allows me the space of being me. And she knows what I need. She knows when she needs to scold me back, even though there's a 13-year difference. But she also knows when I need her to be on my side, like, oh, who do we need to punch? Even though we're not going to punch nobody, you know what I mean? But it's just like you sometimes need that reservoir of like somebody that is going to be able to listen to you. And then it's going to be like, okay, that's done.
What makes a great sister? And I'm asking for the sisters that I watch and they want a good relationship with their older, younger sister, but it's hard. Whether it be jealousy, comparison, or you name it, trauma from when you were kids and you never got over it. How did y'all get as adults to having what you're saying is a great relationship?
We have a great relationship. I think when my dad passed away, my sister was 7. And so I took on the responsibility really early on to look for herself just because I knew that she was my dad's princess. And I always cared for her, but now she's 24 and I feel like she cares for me a lot in her own ways. She's a graphic designer and I'm so proud of her. She's wonderful, she's great, she's talented, she's creative. And I'm gonna cry in a second.
No, I thank you for doing. Don't lose your train of thought. 'Cause I literally was just gonna tell you, let's give your sister some flowers. I love to give flowers here on the pod because sometimes we don't have that gear. We don't know how to give someone compliments or a pat in the back that don't directly work with us or pay us or there's benefits in it. They're just in relationship in life with us, and we wait till someone isn't with us to give them flowers. And you were already saying she's a great graphic designer, she's a great sister, a great person. And so continue with a little bit about your sister, but that's what you were doing, and I just wanted to point that out because I love it.
Yeah, no, she is amazing. And even though she lives in Guatemala, I really don't have any family members here, from my direct family. She's in Guatemala. We are always at the distance of a phone call. And I know I can bother her at any time. It goes back to friendships. It goes back to, bringing value and adding value. I can call her at any time, and even if she's asleep and in a bad mood and tired and cranky, she can be in any place. She's always going to pick up the phone.
When you hear the word motivation, what is it? What thoughts come to your head, or how do you describe motivation? How do you stay motivated?
It's the hunger and the drive that moves you forward because you are not content to where you are. Not that you are overly ambitious, but you know that today you did something great. Today you can celebrate that accomplishment, but tomorrow is a new day that is going to be bringing new challenges. So, okay, that was fantastic. Now, what else? Let's continue moving forward, because what I did yesterday was great, but today, we will do something different.
As I'm getting to know you, I can see that you're a leader. A lot of people are drawn to you. You have great energy. And so as a leader and wanting to help the community, because helping the community sometimes can seem so big and so difficult. The problems that are in our neighborhoods, maybe they've been around for a long time, and then you show up and you see the light. But a lot of people are like, this ain't gonna happen. Mm-hmm. How do you move in that leadership in community?
You start with one person at a time. So a lot of the times I hear like, oh, the hunger kids in Africa, I wish I could help them.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. What about your next door neighbor? You're thinking that help is going to require a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of resources, and a whole bunch of effort. And just the thought of all of that is overwhelming. Why not start one person at a time and make the difference for you right now, or make the difference for the person that I am going to come across in my next meeting, and make them feel unique and special, and that they are bringing value into the table, and that their businesses are important, and that they have a place in the table.
Yeah.
That to me is changing the world. And so you would be impressed by how contagious that is, because you begin with one person and then you do another one, and then the two of them together can do one more person while you continue, and it's a ripple effect.
What's a surprising lesson that you've learned from your leadership, whether it be in community or in entrepreneurship or being involved in businesses? What's something that you learned that surprised you?
That karma exists. Karma, the universe, life, God, the superior, whatever you want to call it, whether you do good or bad, that exists. It's true. It's sometimes you want to acknowledge it, sometimes you don't, but it's like the law of the gravity.
Yeah.
You might want to ignore it. It's going to happen. I promise you.
In leadership, what did you struggle with in the beginning that now you can say, not only have I grown, but now I can develop other leaders in that?
Being a servant leader. Understanding that leadership does not require a title. You can be a leader today and you can be making tortillas, literally. And because in the process of making tortillas, you are bringing economic development to your family, and people that you might not notice are looking into what you are doing. Mm-hmm. You're bringing value to somebody. You are changing somebody's life. You are changing somebody's day to day. You don't need a title to be a leader. And then you have to have the servant heart. Your heart has to be in the right place. You can be in it because you want to be famous, have power, be popular, because, again, the title, because of the money, that comes and goes, and I promise you, you should not do leadership if you're looking for any of those things. There are other ways that you can accomplish that. You have to be in it for the right reasons.
Looking at where you're at now, in your role at the chamber, and the people in the community that you've been involved with, what are some of the most fulfilling parts of it that maybe you get to experience often, or something maybe not often, but you look forward to?
Oh, Coffee with the Chamber is my favorite day of the month because I see a lot of magic happening. Yeah. I see those relationships being formed. I see those stories being created where, you are one relationship away from breaking the deal, from being successful, from closing, from something, being able to see when somebody's business is growing and thriving and succeeding because they are following through, and because they are holding themselves accountable, and because they are fighting every day to overcome their insecurities and their fears And that's a challenge on its own.
So I went to the last coffee with the chamber, and it was overwhelming, to say the least. It was over 200 people there, and it was just humming with conversations. Like, it was so loud. And as an introvert, I struggle in environments like that. But you've obviously been involved with a lot. You've experienced that a lot. So what advice would you give someone that's struggling with networking? But I don't want to just make it a business thing, but just connecting with other humans. You know what I mean? It can be overwhelming sometimes. What are some tips so someone can network a little bit more freely?
So I'm going to tell you, before the chamber, when I first thought about networking, this is what I would feel. Literally.
Yeah.
Like, just the word networking, and like, I would describe it as, oh, I'm gonna be so awkward, like introducing myself, and like, what do I say? Like, it's so awkward. Like, it's just weird, you know? Yeah. But being in the chamber, I learned that it is not about what you are selling, it's what you are able to do for other people. It's generally opening your network. And you might say, well, I'm new. What network am I going to have? No, I promise you. You have a family member. You have a friend. Yeah. You have a neighbor that might be doing something. And you don't know if those relationships and introductions might change the course of somebody that is talking right now. It's not about closing a sale right now. That's not the space to do that. You don't go with intention of selling. You go with intention of contributing to the space, to giving your network, because somebody else is going to be doing that for you. Relationships take time. You have to invest in them. But I promise you that investment pays off greatly. This is seriously like a great relationship that we have. And now, I never knew in the chamber that I was going to end up talking for your amazing audience and for you here. You know?
Thank you for saying that. Mm-hmm. That's very true, by the way.
But I mean, seriously, that's how opportunities happen. And if I were to look back 5 years ago, when I was having that, moment in my life, that's what I would tell myself. You never know what is going to come out of a great conversation with somebody.
How do you continue to challenge yourself as a leader so that you continue to grow? Because I feel like there's certain leaders that exist that they're involved in so many projects. There's so many people coming at them. They feel so useful, and they feel like a resource to so many people that they're not challenging themselves anymore. How do you continue to challenge so that you continue to grow as a leader?
Knowing that I don't know it all, and that there is so much out there that I need to learn. And so it comes with a simple thought. Even if today, right now, I were to matrix myself, plug in every single leadership book that there is out there in the market, okay? Tomorrow, a new generation of kids are going to come in the workplace, and I will not know the first thing to lead them. Yeah, and so it's that continuous improvement, continuous learning process. And you and I were having this conversation yesterday, is creating the habit of coaching myself. Like seeing every opportunity and then recapping and taking the time to really sit down and reflect in the silence and in the quietness. What went well? I'm not going to beat myself down either, What went well, but also what are one or two things that I would do differently next time? And then let's practice again. Let's get back on the ring.
What are some of your goals right now? Whether it be a year, maybe 5, but let's just a lot shorter. What are some of your goals right now for yourself and maybe for the community because of how you're serving right now through the chamber?
So first, for the community, currently our membership is at 850 approximately members. I would love to see our chamber, the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, cross the threshold of 1,000 members.
150 away.
Mm-hmm. 150
Guys, if you're watching and you need a network and meet people, join the chamber and tell them the Failed Podcast sent you. We should put a number outside on the building and then change it every time so that they can see when we hit 1,000.
Just imagine how much outreach, how much goodness, how many businesses we can help to thrive if we were to cross that finish line. And that's just the beginning. But, professionally, I think assisting the chamber into getting to that 1,000 member number. And I think for Isabel, one of the things that makes us really unique in the chamber is that we are business owners ourselves. So retaking and growing my short-term rental business, that's one of my big goals right now. I am a business owner from heart, and I go through all the challenges. And guys, the challenge that I have right now, literally today, is capital funding. And so we have a big project and we needed capital, we knocked doors. So all the things that my members come to tell me, I literally had to go through over the last 30 days. And so, revamping that. And then I am also in the process of I am in the inception actually of an idea of building a business that is helping immigrants, bilinguals, Hispanic individuals with the desire in their hearts of becoming entrepreneurs or leaders in the community, and create a program for them, a space for them to come together and find their community.
That's great. I hope that comes to fruition.
Thank you.
I think every community needs something like that.
Thank you.
When you think of the word failure, what comes to mind? What advice, what definition have you given the word failure that helps you, and by sharing it, you know that it can help someone else?
Sure, you fail, and that sucks. And when you are in the mud, it's the worst. And you know what? You have to take the time to embrace it. You can't skip it. You can cheat it. You can't. You're going to be in the mud, in tears, and it will feel horrible. However, don't take a moment and make a whole huge pity party out of that. It's not forever. It's just one day. The next day is going to be a new day. Take time to reflect and take time to really seek to find the lesson behind that failure. Because I promise you, there is a treasure in disguise behind that failure. The greatest lessons that have forged my character have come from failures.
I love it. Well, let me say thank you so much. Before we finish up, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to give a thought, one final thought, or you might have a question for the Failed Podcast. This is the opportunity to do that. And if there's nothing, then I will finish it up.
Is there an advice that you can give our audience that has to do with the relationships that you have heard over the course of your podcast that would help us to elevate the topic today?
Yeah, well, there's a ton, but one sticks out, and that is it has to do with storytelling. And whenever you're confident about your story and you share it in such an authentic way, right? It sounds like you, it looks like you, and it connects to you very directly. Like no one's having to fill in the gap between what you're saying and who you are. And they're like, no, this is Sam's story, that is Sam. When that exists, whenever you're able to communicate like that, it's easier for people to say, I want to have a relationship with that individual, because it's the authenticity that exists.
I love it.
And it just happens in communication. It's not a sales pitch. It's nothing like that. Now, it's not a natural thing because someone has to find who they are and know how to share it. Hence, when you said the steak and then the rice and beans, that's very authentic and people won't understand it, but it's very connected to who you are. And it allows people to connect with you just based on that. Like it's kind of like a silly example, but it carries a lot of weight between two cultures, two differences. And if you listen strong enough, you can catch those things. But naturally, we connect through those ways. And for me, that's one way.
Awesome.
So there you go. That was a freebie, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Failed podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope that you enjoyed it.
Yes,
guys.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank
very,
you so
very
much to you for the opportunity to talk to your audience. Thank you for the audience for the opportunity to pour a little bit of my story into your day-to-day. Again, if stay connected, build community. If you need the resources, please come and see us at the chamber. We will love to have you.
And then I'm just going to ask you, just send me a text with everything that you want them to know, whatever you want. And guys, in the description below, you'll see there'll be clickable links to the chamber. If you want to know what's going on there, you want to help us hit 1,000 members before this year is over, which I think is very possible.
It is
You just
totally
got to step
attainable.
it up. You just got to help us out a little bit, but it's very doable. Stay tuned, because there's a lot of great things in the pipeline that the chamber is doing, and that's open to anyone, whether you're a member or not. And so stay tuned. But thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Failed podcast. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you look at failure differently every time you tune in to the Failed podcast, and it doesn't scare you, but you just face it, you learn from it, and then you go from it. That's what I want us to do whenever we hear the word failure, is to say, come on, I want to learn from you. And there you go. So y'all be good, and we'll see you on the next one.